Chapter 12. Doreen slammed the front door shut, her cheek still stinging. Through the living room window, she stared at the woman storming off, trying to get an idea of who she was and what had been her problem. The stranger continued to the end of the cul-de-sac, turned left, and kept going. Her back was stiff with righteous indignation, and her footsteps were clipped, her arms swinging at her side as she plowed forward. Likely half of Doreen's neighbors saw the altercation, or at least the woman's angry departure. So much in Doreen's life sucked right now. For what had been a lovely start to the day, this was an ugly ending. She walked back into the kitchen, realizing all her joy at having $100 to spend was gone too. She should probably be grateful the repairman had accepted the deal, or at least verbally. That didn't mean he still had the refurbished one available, but she hoped so. The thought of having a broken gas stove was even more terrifying. What if the gas leaked? She understood he said something about being a gas fitter, but that meant nothing to her. And there was the unknown cost for the wiring. She winced and put it out of her mind. She did know how to make a good cup of coffee though, if she could follow the instructions Mac had given her. And right now, after that undeserved slap, she could use a cup. She found her notepad with the instructions and carefully tried to make a pot of coffee based on Mac's newest detailed steps. She walked to the fridge, opened it, winced, and closed it. There was seriously nothing to look at inside. No cheese meant crackers with peanut butter. She headed over to the cupboard. Even the animals ate better than she did. She sat down with her meal at the otherwise empty dining table. Her phone rang just then. She glanced at the caller ID and growled. "What do you want?" she answered. After a seemingly surprised silence on the other end, Mac asked, "Is there something you should be telling me?" She slumped her chin onto her free hand and propped herself up on the table. "I figured that's why you were calling. The news must have traveled to you already." "What news?" he snapped. She kicked her feet up on the next chair and leaned back. "Some stranger walked up to me while I was at the front door saying goodbye to your repairman friend, and she told me to stop asking questions about Betty Miles, and she whacked me hard across the face." She heard Mac's harsh intake of breath. "Are you okay?" Kudos to him for being concerned about her safety first and foremost. That was part of what made him such a nice man. "Yes. It still stings though. I don't know why she did it. I don't even know who she was." "Can you describe her?" "Matronly, probably 30 or 40 pounds overweight, maybe mid-40s, wearing a skirt, blouse, and a long cardigan." She shrugged. "I can't tell you much more than that." "That describes a good 1/4 of the population of Kelowna." He laughed. "Only there's nothing funny about this," she said in a morose tone. "It was a terrible shock." "You want to press charges?" Mac asked, serious all of a sudden. "No," she was obviously very distraught. "I just don't know about what." "If she told you to stop asking questions about Betty Miles, chances are she's related to Betty in some way." "But Betty went missing 30 years ago, Mac." "If she's a family member or was a good friend or somebody who was caught up in that investigation, the passage of 30 years doesn't matter." "It still hurts today," he said quietly. "I know, for you, it's a fun puzzle to solve, something to distract you from the ills in your own world, but you're raking up old ground that can cause pain to any number of people." "I hadn't thought of that," she said quietly, turning her attention to the darkening sky outside her kitchen window. Just then, the coffee maker beeped. She hopped to her feet. "I'm hoping I made a decent cup of coffee. I followed your instructions." "Good. It sounds like you could use a cup right now." "Yeah, not to mention the fact that the gas stove can't be fixed." "Ouch," he said. "That sucks. Did he give you a cost estimate on a replacement?" "He said he had an older second-hand electric one, if his wife didn't sell it, and he would handle everything, including installation and hauling away my old one, for $100. That's cheap, really cheap, Max said in surprise. Normally I trust him, but that sounds very cheap. Maybe I should give him a call and see if that electric stove is okay. How dangerous could it be? I thought the gas stove was bad enough. I don't even want to be in the kitchen right now. What if the gas is leaking? She could hear the rumble of Mac's laughter as it left his chest. She frowned at him through the phone as she poured a cup of coffee and held it close, sniffing it. I get that I always say stupid things, but it's really not fair that you get to be amused when I'm not. Sorry, it's just the way you say things that makes me smile. So what's so funny in this case? He's a gas fitter. He would have capped off the gas line and you'll be safe there. Considering the age of that house, maybe an electric stove is safer. But then again, I don't know what the wiring looks like. Wiring? She turned to look at the kitchen. I know it's an old house. So you're saying the wiring is not safe either? I'm not saying anything of the kind, he said hurriedly. Don't worry about that now. She took an experimental sip of her coffee. Not bad. She had only made 2 cups worth in case it didn't turn out right. Plus, she couldn't expect to drink more and sleep tonight. She wouldn't mention all that to Mac, as he'd just laugh at her again. Now I get to worry about strangers walking up to my house and smacking me across the face, she grumbled. And how would she have known I was asking questions? You know what the mission's gossip is like, especially with your current notoriety. It was just the 2 of us talking, although I did talk with Nan today. There you have it, he said in exasperation. That old folks' home is the worst for gossip. And gambling. Although I haven't heard Nan mentioning any of that this week. I'm surprised she mentioned it at all. Did she tell you that I had to warn her to stop? Officially? As in, she did something illegal? She shook her head. That doesn't sound like Nan. How about making bets on some people's love lives? Or making bets on who'll have a baby first? Or making bets on when somebody is going to die? Okay, taking bets about people dying is not nice. But those about babies being born are just having some fun. That's all fine and dandy, until she acts like a bookie out of that old folks' home. At that, Doreen sat back and thought about it, then she giggled. And giggled until she was laughing to the point that tears ran down her face. Oh my goodness. I can so see her doing that. Exactly. And when people lose, they get upset. And while Nan's raking in the money, other people are losing their money, and that's when people get mad and complain. I rather imagine that any money she makes will be used to help others somehow, she said with a smile. Like she gave me $100 today. Yeah, but that was probably because she heard your gas stove was out of commission. I doubt she needed to hear anything, Doreen said. She didn't have to. She already knew. Apparently your repairman has been telling her for years how she should get a new stove. He said he mentioned the $100 repair estimate to her several years in a row. She frowned. Do I have to give you the $100 because it might be Nan's ill-gotten gains? He chuckled. No, you don't have to give me the money. Good. I need more to cover the repairman's fees for wiring as it is. She brought the circle of conversation right back around again. By the way, why did you call? To see if you stayed out of trouble this afternoon. But I gather you didn't. And also to hear what Willie said. Who is Willie? The repairman, Max said in exasperation. Then changed the subject entirely. Did you find anything out about Betty Miles? Oh, so now you want to know what I might have found out? Doreen, he said in warning. Don't start. She raised both hands in frustration, even though he couldn't see it. Only what Nan told me. Just that she was a runaway teen, blah 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 blah. He chuckled. So, in other words, all the same stuff you already knew. Yes. I'll see what the library has to say. They should have the newspapers from back then still on microfiche. Is it really that important to you? I'm curious. I feel like I found a piece of her history, she said quietly. And I don't think things like that should be forgotten. She's never been found, has she? Just her arm? Right? Nobody's been charged with her murder? No, yes and no. But that doesn't mean the case is closed. No unsolved murder case is ever closed. At least we're presuming she was murdered. She certainly didn't cut off her own arm, Doreen said sarcastically. But I guess what you're saying is, she might have died in an accident. Or by natural causes. And someone wanted to hide her death. We can't assume anything at this stage. Well, if I find anything at the library, I'll tell you. But in the meantime, it'd be great if you could look into the cold case and see what details are there. Like about that ring. She took a long swallow her coffee. That much I did already, he said. You mean you found something, and you didn't say anything? I'm the detective. You're the busybody, remember? But it was said without rancor. Maybe, but just to clarify, I was a help last time. I could be a help this time. There is no this time, he argued. Are you going to tell me what you found? She poured herself the last of her coffee. She would completely ignore everything he said about staying off the case. If there was one thing in her life she needed right now, it was something to do. Something that brought her a sense of satisfaction, something interesting and something exciting. She'd had enough of her soon-to-be ex-husband's exciting business dinner parties for a long time. All she wanted now was something that was fun. She felt like she should join a knitting club, where everybody could sit around and discuss the evidence. But she wouldn't. She didn't even know how to knit. And she didn't know anybody else who would care to delve into these murder mysteries with her, other than Nan. The ring, Max said. There's one mentioned in one of the thefts at the time, and the description matches the ring I found. Meaning it's connected. Do you think Betty might have stolen it? It was a very sophisticated theft. If she was involved, she certainly wasn't the only one. But, Doreen added, Nan said there was gossip about how Betty's best friend Hannah had given Betty a pretty fancy ring. That's hearsay, Doreen. Don't put much stock in it. Still, if Hannah gave the ring to Betty, then Betty wasn't involved in the jewelry thefts. We're following up on some leads to see where the evidence takes us. So you'll tell me what you find out? Active investigation, Doreen, Max said and hung up.